Welcome back. So in this final part of the tutorial, we're going to add color to our little dancing squares pattern animation here. So far we've gotten the square to move around and we've got it in kind of a row and column setup here. And we're even drawing the counter number in it. So we're going to use that counter to help us control the color that it's going to be. What I want to do is make it so that it changes every other time it changes to a new color. Just like we've done with a lot of these other things that we want to change, I'm going to make a variable because I wanted the x and the y to change, and I wanted counter to change, so I made a variable there. I'm also going to make a variable for color. So I'm going to say let color equal, and then I'm going to start with the color red. Notice again that it's the name of a color, so I need quotes here. These other things were numbers, so we don't need quotes with the numbers because the computer can pretty automatically understand that. But this is kind of a special collection of characters that spell something that means something to humans. This is a string, so we need quotes at the beginning and the end of it. So when I go to draw my square, I'm going to do a fill with color, whatever it happens to be. And in a different part of my code, I'm going to change what this value of color is. Let's just test to make sure that we can even get it to show up red. And so the one thing that I notice here is I can't see my text anymore. And that's because the text is also using the fill color. So I'm going to do fill with color, whatever that happens to be, before square. And then I'm going to do another fill with white, which will show up pretty well, immediately before I do the text. And then by the time the next time it comes around to drawing the square, it's going to do fill with color again. I'm going to get it to draw the square with whatever that color happens to be, but the text is white so I can see it. But let's get into every time that it moves the square that we can actually modify what the color is. All right, one simple thing we could do is make it, if the number gets to be so big, change the color. So I'm going to do my boilerplate if statement here. If 3 is greater than 2, curly braces. All right, I do like to jump into, what's the result? What's the body of this? That I want color to be set equal to black instead of red. Let's figure out what this condition is going to be. All right, so this is just kind of an example expression here. I want to change these to be something that means something in my code. I'm going to have it based on the counter. So I'm going to say if counter is greater than, let's say 10, and set the color equal to black. All right, so I'm getting my red square to pop up. Once counter then becomes greater than 10, not equal to, but greater than 10, then the color changed to black. Right, so I can do lots of different things here. But what I would actually really like to do is to have it change back and forth between being red and black. And as we're watching these numbers here, we're thinking about having it be every other back and forth. What if we could define it so that if the number was even, it did something, and if the number was odd, it did something else? So there actually is a pretty easy way to do that. So if I write the expression counter set sign, which stands for modulo, so if I did counter modulo equals 0, this will help me figure out whether it is an even number or not. Right? So every time that the counter is a multiple of 2, so the numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then this is going to be true. Modulo gives you the remainder when you divide two numbers. So if I do, let's say this is 4. If I do 4 divided by 2, that's a remainder of 0 because you can very easily divide 4 by 2 and you're left over with nothing. Now, if the counter is an odd number, like 5, and I say something like 5 divided by 2, that's not going to give me just a straight whole number answer. It's going to have a remainder, and it's going to be a remainder of 1. So this is a way to test whether it's a multiple of 2 or not. Right? If that remainder is equal to 0, then that's a multiple of 2 in this example. All right, so I got red, then black. Then it didn't change back to red. That's because I never told it to. Right? I started it off as red, and then I said, if I have finally found a condition, which was pretty easy, of counter the remainder with 2 being 0, then change it to black. I need to add an else statement here. So it's like else color equals red again. Right, so now I do get it to switch back and forth between those two colors. And I didn't have to define an else if here because it's either true or false to say that it is a multiple of 2. Right? A number either is a multiple of 2 or it's not. Right? So I don't have to say else if or anything. I can just jump straight to else because there's only a yes or no answer to that question of whether it's an even number. And it's kind of interesting to play around with this number to say, well, what if I changed it to counter modulo 3? Right, so now it's going to give me the case that every third number, it's going to change into that pattern. And you can see that it's multiples of 3. Right, it had 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. All right, we just saw 27, 30. All right, so each of those is the one that it's going to work for. So you can play around with making that happen. And another interesting thing to do would be, instead of watching one square move across, is to see all of them stay on the screen together. And a pretty easy way to do that is to just comment out this line that says background. So every time the animation is running, it's painting over whatever we used to see on there. So if I just don't do that, I turn off the clear screen kind of function like set a background, then I can continuously see everything that's on the page. And as you play around with that modulo number, things get pretty interesting. Once they start to paint, you can make lots of different shapes by changing it. You know, you think, can you get those diagonal lines to run in the opposite direction? Can you get different kinds of shapes to show up? If I change it back to counter modulo 2, I'm essentially going to get a checkerboard. If we line things up in a slightly different way, the fact that we do 8 columns here, that our row has 8 squares in them, that's an even number. All right, so we're not getting that offset. But if I change things around to change the width of our canvas and then the width of each of those squares, that way I wasn't ending in an even number over here, then I could get a checkerboard feature. And there'd even be another way to do it. But it's just kind of neat to play around with. By changing a couple little settings here, can you get an entirely different pattern.